By the time Daniel Mercer crossed the bridge into Amityville, the November sky had already swallowed the sun. The town looked painfully ordinary. Children rode bicycles beneath fading maple trees. Porch lights flickered on one by one. Elderly couples walked their dogs through quiet streets lined with white fences and carefully trimmed hedges. Nothing about the place suggested that people whispered its name with lowered voices. That was exactly what disturbed him. Places with terrible histories usually carried visible scars. This one smiled. Daniel wasn't a ghost hunter or thrill seeker. He was a folklore archivist, specializing in forgotten American legends, the kind that disappeared before anyone bothered writing them down. His work had taken him to abandoned mining towns, forgotten churches hidden inside forests, and isolated mountain villages where old people still nailed horseshoes above every window. He never chased haunted houses. Haunted houses, in his experience, were simply places where grief refused to leave. Until he received a letter. No return address. No signature. Only one sentence. You are studying the wrong ghost. The house was never haunted. It was remembering. Folded inside was a yellowed map leading to a property in Amityville. That sentence had lived inside Daniel's head for 3 weeks. Now he stood outside the infamous house. Moonlight silvered its windows. The famous quarter-circle attic window resembled an enormous eye staring into the darkness. Daniel told himself it was only architecture. Still, it felt aware. A cold wind whispered through bare branches. His recorder crackled with static despite having fresh batteries. He frowned. Environmental interference, he muttered. He said it more for himself than anyone else. Across the street, an elderly woman watched him through lace curtains. The moment their eyes met, she slowly closed them. Not the curtains. Her eyes. As if refusing to witness whatever happened next. Daniel looked away first. His rental cottage sat only a few streets from the property. The owner, Mrs. Eleanor Hayes, handed him an old brass key but didn't smile. You here because of the house? Daniel hesitated. I'm researching local folklore. Her expression hardened. There isn't any folklore. He almost laughed. Every town had folklore. Sometimes people simply forgot it existed. Mrs. Hayes leaned closer. If someone tells you stories about demons. She stopped. Her voice became barely audible. They're telling strangers the easy version. Daniel blinked. What do you mean? She looked toward the dark window. The older people remember something different. Silence. Then. They remember what the house sounded like. A chill climbed Daniel's spine. Sounded like. Mrs. Hayes nodded once. Don't ask them. She walked away before he could speak again. That night, Daniel unpacked his notebooks. Inside the anonymous envelope had also been a faded newspaper clipping dated 1932. The headline read: Local family abandons new home after 8 days. No explanation. No follow-up article. No names. Just one handwritten note in black ink. They heard the counting. Daniel searched every newspaper archive he had brought. Nothing. No family. No records. No deaths. It was as though the article had never existed. He photographed it anyway. When he checked the image, the headline remained. Everything below it had become blank white paper. He stared. His camera had never malfunctioned before. He photographed it again. Blank. Again. Blank. Only the headline survived. Around midnight. Someone knocked. 3 slow knocks. Daniel opened the door. No one stood outside. Only fog. And something lying on the welcome mat. A cassette tape. No label. No case. He looked up and down the empty street. Nothing moved. Inside, he found an old cassette player left by the cottage owner. The tape hissed. Static. Nearly a full minute. Then. A child whispered. 97. Silence. 98. Another child joined. 99. A third. 100. The tape stopped. Daniel rewound it immediately. This time. There was only static. No voices. No counting. The tape had erased itself. Sleep never came. Instead, Daniel found himself staring through the bedroom window. The famous house was visible between trees several blocks away. One upstairs light turned on. Then another. Then another. Every room glowed. He checked the time. 3:11 a.m. No cars had arrived. No one was supposed to be living there. The lights remained on for exactly 1 minute. Then every light went dark simultaneously. Not one after another. Together. Like blinking eyes. Daniel finally crawled into bed. He closed his eyes. The silence felt wrong. Too complete. Then. Very softly. Somewhere beneath the floorboards. A child whispered. 1. Another answered. 2. More voices joined. 3. 4. 5. The counting continued. Slow. Patient. Perfectly synchronized. Daniel shot upright. The sound stopped instantly. His heart thundered. He searched every room. Nothing. No basement. No crawlspace. No children. When he returned to bed, something caught his attention. The bedroom mirror. Written across the fogged glass. Not with ink. Not with blood. But with the clean streak of a fingertip. Don't let them finish. Daniel spun around. The room was empty. He looked back. The message was gone. Only his frightened reflection remained. Outside. Far across the sleeping neighborhood. The house stood perfectly still beneath the moon. Watching. Waiting. Remembering. And somewhere inside the silence. The counting had started again. Daniel Mercer told himself he had imagined the message on the mirror. Sleep deprivation could play cruel tricks on the mind. His work often required long nights in abandoned places, and he had learned that exhaustion could make ordinary shadows seem alive. He repeated this to himself while making coffee the next morning, but the memory refused to fade. He could still picture every letter. Don't let them finish. Outside, Amityville looked peaceful again. Children waited for school buses. A mail carrier whistled as he walked down the street. Somewhere nearby, a lawn mower hummed. The ordinary rhythm of life felt almost rehearsed, as though the town itself was trying too hard to appear normal. Daniel carried the anonymous newspaper clipping to the local historical library. It was a small brick building that smelled of dust and old paper. Shelves stretched from floor to ceiling, crowded with faded records of births, marriages, storms, fires, and forgotten lives. Behind the front desk sat an elderly librarian named Ruth Holloway. She adjusted her glasses when Daniel showed her the clipping. Her smile disappeared. Where did you get this? It was mailed to me. I've never seen this before. It says 1932. She nodded slowly. That's the strange part. What do you mean? We don't have newspapers from that week. Daniel frowned. Missing? They're gone. Destroyed? No. She lowered her voice. They were removed. By whom? No record says. Daniel spent the next 4 hours searching microfilm archives anyway. Every edition before that mysterious week existed. Every edition after it existed. But 8 consecutive days were simply gone. Not damaged. Not misplaced. Gone. As though history itself had been edited. Before leaving, Ruth hesitated. If you're studying that house. I am. There used to be another story. Daniel looked up. Not about ghosts. Then what? She looked around to make sure they were alone. The older families believed the land could remember people. Daniel blinked. Remember? They said every terrible thing that happened there never truly ended. She paused. It stayed. Like energy? No. She shook her head. Like a person remembering your face. A cold silence settled between them. My grandmother used to tell us children something. What? If the house ever starts counting. She swallowed. Don't answer. That afternoon Daniel visited the property again. The police tape and tourist crowds he expected weren't there. Only silence. The house stood behind bare trees, its windows reflecting a gray sky. He noticed something strange immediately. Birds avoided it. Dozens flew over neighboring rooftops. None crossed above the house. Even the wind seemed to bend around it. Daniel activated his audio recorder. Site observation. Day 2. He described everything carefully. Temperature. Weather. Lighting. Then he stopped speaking. Because another voice answered him. Very faint. Almost beneath the sound of the wind. Day 2. Daniel froze. His recorder hadn't echoed. It had repeated him. He pressed stop. The whisper stopped too. His pulse quickened. He rewound the recording. His own voice played clearly. Then. Another voice. His voice. Only older. Hoarser. Site observation. Pause. Final day. Daniel stared at the recorder. He had never spoken those words. Yet they were there. A narrow path led behind the property toward a neglected patch of woods. The air felt colder there. Leaves crunched beneath his boots until they didn't. The forest became unnaturally quiet. Even his footsteps sounded distant. He reached a clearing where broken stones formed the outline of an old foundation. Perhaps another house had once stood there. Or something older. Near the center lay a rusted iron ring embedded in the ground. It looked as though it had once sealed a heavy door. Daniel knelt beside it. The earth around it felt warm. Not from sunlight. From beneath. He placed one hand against the soil. Something tapped back. Once. Twice. 3 times. Daniel jerked his hand away. The tapping stopped. He waited. Nothing. Trying to calm himself, he touched the ground again. This time. Many tiny taps answered. Hundreds. Like dozens of fingertips drumming beneath the earth. He stumbled backward, breathing hard. The forest remained perfectly still. That evening, Mrs. Hayes knocked on his cottage door. Without a word, she handed him a faded leather journal. It belonged to my father. Daniel opened it carefully. Most pages contained weather notes and family records. Until one entry dated November 14, 1956. The counting returned last night. Another page. We covered the walls, but the voices came through the floor. Another. Mother says never count aloud with children you cannot see. Then. The final entry. Only one sentence. If someone asks how many there are, lie. Daniel looked up. What happened to your father? Mrs. Hayes stared at the floor. He stopped recognizing us. What? He knew our names. She struggled to keep her voice steady. But whenever he looked at us, he counted. Silence filled the room. He said one of us was always missing. Near midnight, Daniel decided to review the day's audio recordings. He placed headphones over his ears. The first recording was normal. The second included the mysterious older version of his voice. Then came a sound he hadn't noticed before. Soft breathing. Not one person. Many. Layered together. Listening more carefully, he realized they weren't breathing. They were whispering numbers. Not in order. Not together. Thousands of voices, each trapped in a different place in the count. 7. 42. 108. 3. 61. The whispers slowly aligned. One by one. Until every voice spoke the same number. 113. Silence. Then every voice inhaled at once. Daniel ripped off the headphones. The room was quiet. Too quiet. A sudden knock echoed. Echoed beneath the floor. Not at the door. Under the cottage itself. One knock. Another. Then another. Slow. Patient. As though someone below was asking permission to come up. Daniel didn't move. The knocking continued for exactly 113 taps. Then it stopped. Moments later, his phone buzzed. There was no caller ID. Only a voicemail. He never answered. The message had been left anyway. Static filled the first few seconds. Then a little girl whispered, so softly he almost missed it. You counted us. The line went dead. Daniel stared toward the dark window. Across the distant rooftops, the infamous house stood beneath the moon. One attic window glowed with a faint yellow light. And for just a second, a small figure stood behind the glass. Not looking out. Looking directly at him. Then the light went out. Daniel didn't sleep. The image of the child in the attic window replayed in his mind until dawn, yet something about it disturbed him more than fear itself. He couldn't remember the child's face. He had seen it. He was certain of that. But whenever he tried to picture it, his memory became a blur, as if someone had erased the features with a trembling hand. Only the eyes remained. Watching. Waiting. Remembering. The voicemail haunted him. You counted us. He listened to it again over breakfast. The static was louder this time. Beneath it, another sound emerged. Pages turning. Slowly. One page after another. As if someone were searching through an enormous book. Then. A whisper. Not yet. Daniel frowned. He rewound the message. The whisper vanished. Only static remained. Determined to uncover the truth, Daniel returned to the town archives. This time Ruth Holloway was waiting for him. You came back. I need records from before the house was built. Her face paled. Why? Because I don't think this started with the house. She looked at him for a long moment before disappearing into a locked storage room. When she returned, she carried a weathered wooden box wrapped in faded cloth. My grandmother hid these. Inside were handwritten journals dating back to the late 1800s. Most were ordinary. Harvest records. Family births. Church gatherings. Then Daniel found one written by a schoolteacher named Abigail Cross. Its final pages were different. The children have begun speaking to empty corners. They insist someone beneath the ground knows all their names. Yesterday little Samuel counted to 37 before stopping. When asked why, he said. Daniel swallowed as he read the next sentence. Because 38 hasn't arrived yet. That afternoon he met the town's oldest resident, 93-year-old Thomas Brennan. Thomas refused to discuss the famous house inside his home. Instead, he led Daniel to a quiet pier overlooking dark water. For several minutes neither spoke. Finally Thomas sighed. "You think something lives there?" Daniel nodded. "Doesn't it?" Thomas shook his head. "No." "What then?" "It doesn't live. It remembers." Daniel had heard those words before. Remembers what? Thomas stared across the lake. Everyone. Daniel felt a knot tighten in his stomach. Thomas continued. "My grandfather helped clear the land before the first house stood there." "What did he find?" "Nothing." Daniel frowned. "Nothing?" Thomas nodded slowly. "That's what frightened him. There should have been animal bones. Old trees. Broken tools. Something. But there wasn't." Thomas's eyes filled with quiet dread. The earth looked erased. That evening Daniel compared old maps from different decades. Something impossible appeared. Every map showed the property. Every road matched. Every nearby house matched. Except one farmhouse appeared only once. It stood directly where the haunted property now existed. On every later map. It was gone. No demolition record. No fire report. No ownership transfer. Nothing. As though the farmhouse had simply been forgotten. Daniel searched county records. The address existed. But the owner's name had been scratched out. Not crossed out. Scratched. Page after page. Every document. Every signature. Every photograph. The face remained. The name did not. Rain began after sunset. Heavy drops rattled against the cottage windows. Daniel spread the old documents across his table. Something felt wrong. One page was missing. He searched everywhere. Nothing. Then he noticed muddy footprints leading toward the hallway. He lived alone. The footprints were small. Child-sized. They ended at the bedroom door. Beyond it. The carpet was perfectly clean. Heart pounding, Daniel pushed the door open. The room was empty. But the wardrobe door stood open. Inside hung only his coat. Nothing else. He closed it. A faint giggle echoed from within. He flung it open again. Empty. Near midnight, the power failed. Darkness swallowed the cottage. Only the rain remained. Then came another sound. Someone was walking upstairs. Slow. Measured. One step every 5 seconds. Daniel lived in a single-story cottage. There was no upstairs. The footsteps continued. Boards creaked directly above his head. Back and forth. Back and forth. As though someone was searching for something. Then they stopped. Silence. A tiny voice whispered through the ceiling. "Daniel." His blood ran cold. He had never told anyone in town his first name. The whisper came again. "Daniel." Then another voice joined. Then another. Soon dozens of children softly repeated his name. Not calling him. Practicing it. Learning it. Until suddenly every voice stopped together. One final whisper floated through the darkness. "We found you." The lights returned without warning. Everything looked normal. Except the documents on the table. Every page had changed. The words were gone. In their place, each sheet contained the same sentence, written in faded black ink. "We could not remember his name." Daniel turned the pages frantically. Every one was identical. His breathing quickened. He grabbed the journal Abigail Cross had written. Even it had changed. The final page now read. Now it has yours. Before he could react, the room grew unnaturally cold. His recorder switched on by itself. Without batteries. Static crackled. Then his own voice spoke. Calm. Emotionless. I remember now. Daniel stared in horror. He had never said those words. The recorder continued. It always begins with the name. It ends when the house forgets your face. Static returned. Then. A loud knock echoed from the front door. 3 slow knocks. Daniel looked through the peephole. No one stood outside. Only darkness. As he turned away. Another knock came. This time. From inside the house. Behind him. Very slowly, he looked toward the hallway. The wardrobe door was open again. Someone stood inside. A little boy. His clothes were soaked with black water. His face remained hidden beneath wet hair. In a trembling voice, the child asked only one question. Do you still know your name? The lights went out. And somewhere in the darkness, something answered for Daniel. It wasn't his voice. Darkness swallowed the cottage. Daniel couldn't breathe. The voice that had answered the child had come from his own mouth, but he had never opened it. For several seconds, the silence felt heavier than the night itself. Then the lights flickered back on. The wardrobe was empty. No child. No wet footprints. Nothing. Only Daniel's reflection in the wardrobe mirror. But something was wrong. His reflection wasn't looking at him. It was staring over his shoulder. When Daniel spun around, the room was empty. By the time he looked back, the reflection was normal again. Morning brought no relief. Daniel packed his recorder, flashlight, camera, and the old journal Mrs. Hayes had given him. He wasn't going back to the library. He wasn't searching through old maps anymore. Whatever was happening wasn't hiding in documents. It was hiding beneath the house. As he walked toward the infamous property, the streets seemed strangely deserted. Curtains moved. People watched from behind windows. No one stepped outside. No one spoke. It felt as though the entire town knew where he was going. And none of them expected him to return. The house stood in complete silence. Its windows reflected only gray clouds. The front door was locked, but Daniel discovered a narrow opening in the fence leading toward the backyard. There, hidden beneath dead leaves, was a rusted metal cellar door almost completely buried beneath the earth. It hadn't appeared on any map. The heavy iron handle was cold enough to burn his skin. He pulled. The hinges screamed. A damp smell drifted upward. Not mold. Not decay. Something older. Like earth that had never seen sunlight. Daniel switched on his flashlight and climbed down the narrow stone steps. The door slammed shut above him. The sound echoed through the darkness. He rushed back. It wouldn't open. He was trapped. The underground chamber stretched farther than the house itself. Brick walls disappeared into darkness. Water dripped steadily somewhere beyond the reach of his light. His footsteps echoed strangely. Not once. Twice. As though someone invisible walked beside him. Then he noticed the walls. Names. Thousands of names. Carved into the bricks. Some fresh. Some centuries old. Some scratched so deeply they had cracked the stone itself. Daniel ran his fingers across one. The letters felt warm. As he touched them, the names slowly disappeared. Not faded. Vanished. The brick became smooth again. At the same moment, a woman's scream echoed through the tunnel. It lasted only a second. Then silence returned. Daniel stumbled backward. Another name vanished. Then another. The walls were forgetting. Deeper inside, the tunnel opened into a circular chamber. At its center stood an ancient wooden chair. Facing the wall. Not the room. Resting on the seat was a leather-bound ledger. Its pages were impossibly clean. Daniel opened it carefully. Every page contained only names. Thousands upon thousands. Some crossed out. Others circled. The final page was blank. As he watched, letters slowly appeared. D. A. N. Daniel slammed the book shut. The room fell silent. Then every wall around him whispered together. Too late. A sharp tapping echoed behind him. Tap. 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 Daniel turned. No one. The tapping continued. This time from above. Then below. Then all around him. His flashlight beam swept across the chamber. Children. Dozens of them. Standing perfectly still along the walls. None had faces. Only smooth, pale skin where eyes and mouths should have been. Their heads tilted toward him. Listening. One child slowly lifted a finger. Pointing toward the chair. The others copied the movement. Every finger pointed at the empty seat. As though inviting him to sit. Daniel stepped backward. The children stepped forward. Without making a sound. His recorder suddenly switched itself on. Static hissed. Then a familiar voice. Mrs. Hayes. Don't sit. Another voice. Thomas Brennan. It learns your weight. Then Ruth Holloway. If you sit. The recording crackled violently. It remembers you forever. The recorder burst into silence. The faceless children stopped moving. One by one. They turned toward the darkness behind Daniel. Not at him. At something approaching. Something they feared. A slow scraping sound filled the chamber. Like heavy furniture being dragged across stone. Daniel raised his flashlight. At first he saw nothing. Then the beam caught movement. A tall figure emerged from the darkness. It was impossibly thin. Its body seemed wrapped in layers of cracked, black skin that shifted like dry paper. Its arms reached almost to the floor. Where its face should have been. There was only smooth flesh. No eyes. No nose. No mouth. And yet. It was smiling. Daniel couldn't explain how he knew. He simply felt it. The thing stopped beside the chair. Slowly. It placed one long hand on the backrest. Waiting. Offering. Inviting. The faceless children lowered their heads. As if bowing before it. Daniel's legs refused to move. The room became unnaturally warm. The ledger opened by itself. Its pages flipped rapidly until they reached the last sheet. His full name now appeared in dark ink. Beneath it. A single empty line. Waiting for a signature. The creature lifted one finger and pointed toward the page. The whisper came from everywhere at once. Accept. Daniel's hand began to rise on its own. He fought against it. Every muscle trembled. His fingers stretched toward the book. Closer. Closer. Just inches away. The old journal in his backpack slipped onto the floor. It fell open to a page he had never seen before. Written in faded handwriting were the words. The room beneath the house is not a prison. It is a mouth. Suddenly, the ground shook. A deep groan echoed beneath the chamber. The brick floor cracked open. From the darkness below came the voices of hundreds of children. Not whispering. Not counting. Screaming. The creature turned toward the widening crack. For the first time. It seemed afraid. And from the endless blackness beneath the floor, something enormous began climbing up. The chamber shook violently. Stone dust poured from the ceiling as the crack in the floor widened, revealing a darkness so deep that Daniel's flashlight couldn't reach its bottom. The faceless children scattered without making a sound. One by one, they stepped backward into the walls. Not through hidden doors. Through solid brick. Within seconds, they were gone. Only the tall, skin-covered figure remained beside the wooden chair. For the first time since Daniel had seen it. It hesitated. Then came a sound unlike anything he had ever heard. It wasn't a growl. It wasn't a scream. It was thousands of voices speaking one number together. 1. The chamber fell silent. Another voice answered from the abyss. 2. The floor trembled harder. Daniel suddenly understood. The counting wasn't coming from children. The children had only been repeating it. Something far older had begun the count. A massive hand emerged from the darkness. It wasn't made of flesh. It looked as though countless pale human arms had been woven together into a single enormous limb. Hundreds of fingers crawled across the broken stone like spiders. Each finger ended in a tiny human eye instead of a fingernail. The eyes blinked in different directions. Some stared at Daniel. Others searched the room. One by one, they all turned toward the tall creature. The creature stepped backward. For the first time. It seemed terrified. The whisper came again. 3. The giant hand tightened around the edge of the pit. Slowly. Something pulled itself upward. Daniel saw only fragments. A shoulder made from overlapping faces. A neck that twisted too far. Hair drifting as though underwater. Where its head should have been, there was a perfect circle of darkness. Not a face. A hole. Endless. Silent. Hungry. Inside that darkness, children's voices counted together. 4. The tall creature suddenly moved. It rushed toward the ancient chair, grabbed the leather ledger, and tried to flee into one of the tunnels. The enormous thing reacted instantly. Dozens of pale arms burst from the darkness and wrapped around the creature. It never screamed. Instead, its body simply folded inward, like paper crushed by invisible hands. Within seconds, it disappeared into the black circle where its face had once been. Gone. As though it had never existed. The ledger fell onto the stone floor. The final page fluttered open. Daniel's name vanished. Every page became blank. Then every eye on the giant hand turned toward Daniel. Hundreds of them. Blinking together. Watching. The voices spoke again. 5. Daniel's knees weakened. A memory surfaced without warning. He was 7 years old. Standing alone in his bedroom. Someone beneath his bed had whispered. 6. His parents had insisted it was only a dream. Now he wasn't so sure. Another memory followed. His grandmother telling him never to answer voices at night. He had forgotten that conversation decades ago. How? Why? The thing seemed to be pulling forgotten memories out of him. Not stealing them. Reading them. The journal in Daniel's backpack slipped free once more. Another hidden page revealed itself. The ink was fresh, as though written moments ago. It does not hunt people. It hunts those who remember hearing it before. Daniel stared in disbelief. That was impossible. He had never been to Amityville as a child. Had he? A sharp pain exploded behind his eyes. Another memory returned. A family road trip. Rain. His father stopping outside an old house. His mother saying quietly, "Don't let him look." Daniel had forgotten the entire day. Until now. The voices reached the next number. 6. The enormous figure climbed completely out of the pit. It was taller than the chamber itself, yet its body bent in impossible ways, folding like smoke. Its skin constantly changed. Every few seconds another face appeared beneath the surface. An old woman. A crying boy. A frightened soldier. A priest. A little girl. Each face silently mouthed words before melting into another. Thousands of lives. Thousands of memories. One body. The creature raised one arm. Not toward Daniel. Toward the ceiling. The house groaned above them. Bricks shifted. Wood cracked. From somewhere overhead came the sound of every door inside the house slamming shut at once. The entire property seemed alive. Not possessed. Awake. The house wasn't the source of the horror. It was only the lid. Keeping something buried. The voices whispered together. 7. The giant figure stopped moving. Every face beneath its skin disappeared. Its body became perfectly smooth. Then, very slowly, a single human face formed where the empty darkness had been. Daniel's own face. It smiled. Not cruelly. Sadly. It spoke in Daniel's own voice. "You came back." Daniel stepped backward. "I've never been here." The creature tilted its head. "Not this time." A freezing silence filled the chamber. Then it spoke again. "You always come back." The words echoed inside Daniel's mind rather than his ears. Images flashed before his eyes. Different centuries. Different clothes. Different names. Different faces. Yet every frightened person standing before the same endless darkness was somehow him. Again. And again. And again. His knees hit the stone floor. He couldn't tell whether the memories were real or being planted inside his mind. The creature leaned closer. The countless whispers merged into one calm voice. The house never remembers people. It remembers only one. Daniel felt the world around him collapse. The walls. The floor. The house. The town. Everything dissolved into darkness. Only the voice remained. "You." The last thing Daniel saw before losing consciousness was the ancient ledger drifting across the floor. A new sentence slowly wrote itself on its first page. The cycle has begun again. Daniel awoke to absolute silence. No dripping water. No shifting stone. No whispering children. For a long moment, he thought he had gone deaf. He opened his eyes. The underground chamber was gone. He was lying in the middle of an empty bedroom inside the house. Dust floated through pale morning light pouring from broken curtains. The room was bare except for a wooden rocking chair facing the window. It moved gently. Back. And forth. Back. And forth. There was no wind. Daniel stood slowly. His head throbbed. The memories from the chamber still churned inside him. Faces. Names. Centuries. None of them felt entirely foreign anymore. They felt familiar. As if they had belonged to him once. He searched the room. The door opened into a hallway coated with faded wallpaper, stained by age and moisture. The house looked abandoned. Yet every room felt as though someone had left only moments earlier. A teacup still sat on a table. A child's shoe rested beside the staircase. A grandfather clock ticked softly. Its hands pointed to 3:11. Every clock in the house showed the same time. None of them moved. Daniel reached the staircase. Halfway down, he froze. Someone was humming. A lullaby. Soft. Gentle. Coming from the living room. He followed the sound. An old woman sat in a rocking chair beside the cold fireplace. Her silver hair covered most of her face. She rocked slowly while humming the tune. Daniel swallowed. "Excuse me." The humming stopped. Without turning around, the woman spoke. "You came later this time." His heart skipped. "Who are you?" "You've asked that before." "I've never met you." A dry laugh escaped her lips. "You never remember." Very slowly, she turned. Daniel's breath caught. The woman had no eyes. Only smooth skin where they should have been. Yet somehow. She looked directly at him. "You've been here before," she whispered. Daniel shook his head. "No. Many times." "No. Different names." "No. Same ending." The room grew colder. She lifted one trembling finger toward the staircase. "The house isn't haunted." Daniel finished the sentence without thinking. "It's remembering." The words left his mouth before he realized what he had said. The woman smiled. "You remembered that much?" A loud crash echoed upstairs. Then another. Footsteps. Dozens of them. Children running across wooden floors. Laughing. Playing. The sounds were impossibly normal. For a brief moment, the house felt alive. Happy. Daniel looked upward. The laughter suddenly stopped. Every child spoke together. "Hide." The old woman's smile vanished. "They're here." "Who?" "The ones who forgot." The front door burst open. Cold air rushed inside. Dark figures entered one by one. Men. Women. Children. Perhaps 20 in all. Their clothes belonged to different centuries. Some wore old farming clothes. Others Victorian dresses. One wore a military uniform. A little boy clutched a broken wooden horse. None of them had faces. Only blank skin. They wandered through the house silently. Touching walls. Opening doors. Looking for something they could never find. The old woman whispered. "They lost their names." Daniel stared. "What happened to them?" "They stayed too long." One faceless man stopped in front of Daniel. His head tilted. Slowly. A mouth appeared where none had existed. Then a nose. Then eyes. Within seconds, Daniel found himself staring at his father. Exactly as he had looked 20 years earlier. "Daniel," the man said softly. "Come home." Daniel stumbled backward. "No." The face smiled sadly. "I'm waiting." Then it melted away. Blank skin returned. The figure wandered off. Daniel's hands trembled. The house was using memories. Building faces from them. The old woman suddenly grabbed Daniel's wrist. Her grip was impossibly strong. "Listen carefully." He knelt beside her. "There is only one way to stop it." "How?" "You must let it forget you." "What does that mean?" She sighed. "You must give it your last memory." Daniel frowned. "My last memory?" "The one that made you who you are." "If it takes that, you'll survive. But you won't be the same." Before Daniel could ask another question, the walls shook violently. Every clock in the house began ticking again. Fast. Too fast. Seconds flew by like rain. The windows darkened. The floor trembled. From somewhere deep beneath the house came the familiar counting. 1, 2, 3. This time it was louder. Closer. The old woman stood. Her body began fading like smoke. Our time is ending. Who are you? She smiled gently. The first one. The first what? The first person. Her voice broke. Who forgot? She disappeared. The rocking chair continued moving by itself. The hallway stretched impossibly long as Daniel ran toward the front door. Every room he passed contained another version of himself. A little boy crying beneath a bed. A teenage Daniel staring into a mirror. An older Daniel with gray hair writing frantically in a notebook. Each version looked up as he passed. Each whispered the same sentence. Don't let it remember you. He finally reached the front entrance. The door stood wide open. Outside, Amityville was gone. No streets. No trees. No sky. Only endless black fog. Floating within it were thousands of glowing doors. Each door led to another house. Another family. Another lifetime. Another beginning. Daniel realized with horror that the house was not a single place. It was a doorway. A memory that kept repeating itself in different lives. Behind him, the counting stopped. A calm voice echoed through the empty house. So. Daniel turned slowly. The enormous being from beneath the chamber stood in the hallway. Its shifting body was now completely still. Its face was once again Daniel's. Only older. Tired. Ancient. It smiled. I finally remembered. A long silence followed. Then it spoke the words Daniel feared more than death. Your real name. The house let out a deafening groan. Every door slammed. Shut. And somewhere beyond the walls, something answered. It wasn't human. The answer came from beyond the walls. It wasn't a scream. It wasn't a voice. It was the sound of thousands of memories being erased at once. Photographs faded. Names vanished from old letters. Faces blurred inside family albums. Somewhere, clocks stopped ticking. For one impossible moment, reality itself seemed to hesitate. The ancient being stood silently in the hallway, wearing Daniel's face. Only now, its expression wasn't cruel. It looked exhausted. Like something that had carried an unbearable burden for far too long. You know my real name? Daniel asked, barely able to speak. The creature nodded. I always have. Then why didn't you take me? A faint sadness crossed its face. Because you always returned before I could. The black fog outside the doorway began pouring into the house like slow-moving water. Inside it drifted countless glowing fragments. At first Daniel thought they were fireflies. Then he realized they were memories. A little girl's first laugh. A soldier's final goodbye. A mother's lullaby. A wedding. A funeral. A forgotten birthday. Millions of moments floated through the darkness like dying stars. Each one belonged to someone who had entered the house. Each one had been left behind. The house had never fed on blood. It fed on remembrance. The creature extended one hand. In its palm rested a small silver key. Daniel recognized it instantly. It was the brass key Mrs. Hayes had given him on the first night. Except older. Rusted. Ancient. You've carried this before. I don't understand. You built the lock. Daniel stared in disbelief. What lock? The house. A cold realization settled over him. The house wasn't built to imprison people. It had been built to imprison something else. Fragments of impossible memories flooded Daniel's mind. Centuries earlier, there had been no house. Only an open pit in the earth. People came from distant places after hearing whispers beneath the ground. Some disappeared. Others returned, changed. One man refused to leave. A scholar. A man obsessed with understanding what lived beneath the earth. He remained there for years. Listening. Writing. Counting. Eventually, he discovered a terrible truth. The thing below couldn't escape on its own. It needed someone to remember it. So the scholar did the only thing he could. He built a house above the pit. A prison disguised as a home. Then, he erased his own identity. Again. And again. Across generations. Across lifetimes. He was reborn countless times. Each life ended the same way. Returning. Forgetting. Beginning again. Daniel gasped. The scholar had always been him. The creature watched quietly. I was never your enemy. Then what are you? I am what remained. My memories. The creature nodded. Every time you chose to forget, you left another piece of yourself behind. Daniel looked closer. The faces beneath the creature's skin. They weren't strangers. They were every forgotten version of himself. Every lifetime. Every sacrifice. Every ending. The counting echoed once more. Not from below. From everywhere. 1. 2. 3. The house trembled violently. Cracks spread across the walls. The prison was failing. The thing beneath was waking. The creature stepped aside. There is only one choice left. The old woman said I must give it my last memory. Not anymore. What then? You must become the memory. Daniel finally understood. As long as someone remembered the thing beneath the house, it could always return. Someone had to remember forever. So no one else ever would. Outside, the black fog dissolved. The glowing doors vanished one by one. Somewhere in the distance, children laughed. Real children. Not whispers. Not echoes. The faceless figures inside the house slowly began changing. Eyes appeared. Smiles returned. Parents embraced children they no longer recognized. Names returned to lips that had forgotten them for centuries. One by one, they walked through the front door into the morning light. Free at last. The old woman was among them. Before disappearing, she smiled at Daniel. This time, she whispered softly. It's over. Then she was gone. The creature handed Daniel the silver key. I can't do this anymore. You won't have to. Daniel closed his fingers around the cold metal. The key crumbled into fine gray ash. The house groaned. Walls collapsed inward. The floor opened, revealing the endless darkness beneath. From the abyss came a voice unlike any before. It spoke only one sentence. Remember me. Daniel smiled sadly. No. He stepped into the darkness. The creature smiled back. Then both of them disappeared together. The pit closed. The earth became still. The house collapsed into itself without a sound. When the dust settled, there was nothing left. No foundation. No cellar. No broken walls. Only empty grass beneath a pale morning sky. Epilogue. 30 years later. A young history student arrived in Amityville to research local folklore. He spent an entire week interviewing residents. Everyone told him the same thing. There was never a haunted house here. Old maps showed only an empty field. Newspapers mentioned no tragedies. Photographs revealed nothing unusual. It was as though the infamous address had never existed. Confused, the student prepared to leave town. As he crossed the old bridge, he noticed an elderly woman feeding birds beside the road. She smiled kindly. "Looking for something? I heard there used to be a famous house here." The woman frowned thoughtfully. "I don't think so." Then she paused. "There is one strange story, though." "What story?" She looked toward the quiet field. "They say sometimes, very late at night. The wind sounds like children counting." The student laughed. "Just a legend." The old woman smiled. "Perhaps." Neither of them noticed the man standing alone in the distant field. He wore a dark coat. His face was impossible to see. He watched the sunrise without moving. As the first rays of light touched the grass, he quietly whispered a single word. "Forgotten." Then he was gone. And for the first time in centuries, the silence remained.